you're going to have to make that decision for yourself, right? You're going to have to make a decision as to how authentic, how transparent you want to become, how strict do you want to be with your boundaries in order to make your life the best. And just know, at least know to yourself, to whatever level you minimize, dim your own light, hold back your own truth, that is the level to which you will succeed. Welcome to the Ignited Recovery Podcast, a new way forward for anyone looking for answers but feeling left out. If you've been searching for empowerment, triumph, and purpose, you've found them right here. You won't hear the same solutions, and you're not going to have any excuses to fall back on, because Ignited Recovery allows heroes to rise and become their best selves. I'm Dr. Adi Jaffe, and I can't wait to be your guide on this journey. Are you ready to become an ignited hero? Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Ignited Recovery Secrets Podcast. I'm Adi Jaffe, and I'm going to talk today about a topic that Sophie and I just did an Instagram TV about. I wrote my email for our list about this week, and that is the topic of radical transparency. If you've been listening to me for any long period of time or listening to Sophie and I on the podcast, I'm sure you've heard of radical transparency before. And we talk about it oftentimes in the context of the addiction work that I do. I would put this under the honest exploration part of the work that I believe everybody has to do to beat addiction forever, find themselves free of even worrying about relapsing or any of those sorts of things. And the reason for that is simple, even if it's difficult to carry forward. So I'm going to explain all of that here today. But let's even start out simply. Let's start out by explaining what the hell is radical transparency. So a lot of us have learned that we shouldn't lie. It's one of those old rules of appropriate behavior as an adult, maybe even as a child, although I got to say my kids probably lie a good bit or at least exaggerate the truth right all the time. But as an adult, you learn, hey, you're supposed to tell the truth. Be honest. I would say that being honest is 25 to 30% of what I think you really need to do in your life if you want to get to the places where I believe a lot of us want to get. So whether it's Dalai Lama's notion of our goal overall is to find happiness, you want to feel content. If you've watched our Ultimate Bliss Blueprint workshop and, you know, the whole notion of how do I feel fulfilled in my own life on a regular basis, not just in these peak individual moments, but regularly as my experience in life, I really believe we got to go way past honesty. And I'm going to call radical transparency that next level. But it's not even, honesty doesn't even get you 50% of the way there, because honesty is the idea that when somebody asks you or when you're confronted with the truth, you will admit it, right? So somebody asks you, how was your day today? And you say, pretty good. What'd you do? Oh, I went to the store, had to go do a little bit of shopping. That might be honest. You might have had a pretty good day and you may have gone to the store. You may just be missing some details that the person doesn't know to ask you about. Now, you might not want to practice radical transparency with everybody. It depends on who it is that's on the other side. But the whole point I'm making here is honesty depends on the other person knowing what questions to ask you or finding out things that they confronted you with. I've lived a relatively honest life from the time when I stopped using meth. So if you remember any of my story, I was addicted to meth and a lot of drugs, but meth was kind of the one that took me down, went to jail, etc. Came back and was really honest. I was sober from meth, actually still sober from meth to this day, so that's almost 20 years. But in general, lying became something that I wouldn't do anymore. But in my relationship with Sophie, that also meant I didn't talk about a lot of things. And here's the thing about transparency versus honesty. When you're honest, if you're not transparent, there are a lot of things you're hiding, a lot of things you're keeping under wraps, a lot of things you're doing everything you can to cover up so that the other person either won't find them out or won't know to ask you, and therefore you won't have to lie because you're an honest person. You can raise your hand if you're anywhere in private right now listening to this and you've ever done this before, right? Known that, let's say, one of the reasons you really like going to that coffee shop on Tuesdays to work, I'm totally making this up, is because there's a cute girl or a guy that you flirt with, and you really don't want your boyfriend, husband, wife, girlfriend to know about that because you really want to keep going to the coffee shop and do the work. You're being honest. You went to the coffee shop to do work. You're not lying to them about that per se, but you're also not telling them a piece of the puzzle that might change the equation. So if I was going to compare honesty and transparency, here's one of the best ways that I would do it. Transparency is what would happen if somebody could figuratively read your mind, see through you. That's why it's called transparency. Radical transparency means if somebody is looking at you, do they know everything they would want to know about you as if they can see through you? That means that even when there are gaps, even when there are things that you don't want them to know, are afraid to share, they don't know to ask about, you still find ways to introduce those into the relationship. A lot of you are scared just listening to a concept like that. But I'm going to challenge you. Here's the thing. A lot of you think that you're making your relationships better by not revealing everything. You're keeping things that other people don't want to hear at bay. You're holding on to truths that are uncomfortable to make the other person more comfortable or feel better or safer in the relationship. You're saying things that the other person wouldn't like to hear so that they don't have to have the negative impact of you revealing the truth. But if we're really honest with ourselves right now, we're lying. Why are we lying? We're lying because we're not really trying to save them from the discomfort. We're trying to save ourselves from the discomfort of having to have that conversation. And what ends up happening along the way is we're living in false relationships. You see, the person that you're talking to believes things about you that are not true. Because had they known, were they able to be transparent with you and were you able to be transparent with them, there would be new truths revealed. And those truths will change the basis of the relationship. And here's the rub. By not revealing everything to them, you're not allowing them to know the best version of you, the real version of you, the authentic version of you. So they're not really in a relationship with that version of you. They're in a relationship with a lesser, more constricted, less open and free version of who you really are. And because that's all you're giving them, that's the only person they'll ever get to be in a relationship with. And so, inevitably, if they're not getting the best of you, they're not getting the truest version of you, there will be chasms that will form in the relationship. And you will have to fill those because that other side of you, the more authentic, fuller version of you, is going to need to find ways to come out. And if you're one of those people who talks about your partner behind their back or has parts of you, and I'm not saying your loved one, your lover, your wife, husband has to be able to fulfill every need you have. That's not what I'm saying. But if there are parts of you that they can't be aware of because you're afraid that revealing them will make that person like you less or will make them trust you less, etc., you're actually shooting yourself in the foot. You're not allowing them to have the most authentic experience of you. And therefore, and this is the last piece I want to make today, this is an incredible way, not being radically transparent is an incredible way to make sure that you cannot really have full, authentic trust and intimacy in the relationship. Now, I've been in a relationship, you've heard me and Sophie talk about this numerous times when we first started out, where I was scared to bring up sexual issues or needs or just really relationship and intimacy problems that we had because I didn't want to make her mad or I didn't want her to think less of me. But what ended up happening is I still needed to fulfill those needs. And so, I ended up fulfilling them with somebody else. And that was an indirect result of me not being able to be authentic with Sophie. And so I kept breaking her trust, thinking I was saving her from discomfort and actually causing the most massive discomfort that I could later on through actual betrayal and cheating. And I've dealt with dozens and dozens of husbands and some wives who've had similar experiences. They've known that their relationship is not the best that it can be, but they were so scared of starting the conversation about how to get there. They were so uncomfortable with the idea of making them and their loved one uncomfortable, anxious, stressed out to go through this process that they held off. And then they held off more and more and more. In the meantime, they filled up that gap, that space, that void with things like alcohol or drugs or porn or other people. And eventually, the break, the chasm, the gap between who they really are and who their partner knew them as was so big that it either caused a separation or almost broke apart the relationship. Some of you listening right now are connecting. You're seeing how this relates to your own life, and just fear is enveloping you. I can't do this. Where do I go from here? I know this because I got questions from some of you when Sophie and I share this on social media, and I want to talk about one of those questions in particular. And Sophie and I will definitely address some more of them later on when we do this work. But one of the questions was, how do you deal with people in your life who may not be ready for that radical transparency, who are not quite there? And there's some subtext to this, and I'm going to mention that here in a moment. But look, here's the thing. A side effect of you not being authentic is that you will draw people into your life who want this less authentic version of you. They want who you are pretending to be, not who you truly are. And so, yes, of course, once you reveal your truth, there will be people who go, wait, I didn't sign up for this. I didn't sign up for this version of you. I signed up for that other version of you, the version that doesn't tell me to my face what's going on, the version that is okay with anything that we do just because they're afraid and anxious that it will cause friction. So they just, put their needs completely to the side. The version who lies to me about the fact that I look good, sound good, feel good, smell good all the time and never challenges me on my opinions, looks, thoughts, or anything of that nature, right? There are people who will be drawn to that, of course, because you're not presenting anything else, and it's comfortable for them to be able to project what they want onto you. And so the follow-up to this question is, how do I keep those people in my life without them becoming emotional vampires, without breaking boundaries, or even while still maintaining the relationship? And the answer is a complex one, to be perfectly honest, because there will be some of those relationships that will not work. I think that's a gift. I think it's nice when people who are in your life because they don't want the most authentic version of you and they get scared or angry or stressed out or anxious when that person comes out and they can't deal with that. I think it's a gift when those people leave, right? It frees up more space for authentic relationships in your life, which is a good thing. How do you make them not become emotional vampires? You remain authentic. You remain radically transparent. You have the uncomfortable conversations when they happen, right? Somebody owes you money for a really long period of time. You don't say anything about it. It's not their fault. You haven't mentioned anything about it. You can say to yourself in your own head, well, everybody should pay off their debts. Well, that's fine, but you're just having thoughts about that in your own head. How about calling them up, shooting them a text? Hey, what about that money you owe me? And I can make that exact same comparison to emotional capital, right? Not money in the bank, but money in your heart, money in your head. If they are taking up an incredibly large amount of space in your head, but they're not paying rent, maybe it's time to actually kick them out. Here's what I've noticed most of the time in my life. When you hold people's feet to the fire, when you are transparent with them, a lot of people actually level up. They end up appreciating it because they've been in a lull. They've been themselves just not being the best, truest version of themselves because they could also get by. But once they see you leveling up, some of your friends will come right up those stairs with you, right? They will love the elevator ride, the escalator ride, this flight into another level of being that they didn't even know was possible for them. And while you ride the elevator with those friends, yes, there will be other ones you will leave behind, but that's okay because you leave more space in the elevator for new people. And you'll see it too. When you meet those new people, there will be space in your life because it's not being taken on by the blood leaching energy of the friends you've left. Again, you're going to have to make that decision for yourself, right? You're going to have to make a decision as to how authentic, how transparent you want to become, how strict do you want to be with your boundaries in order to make your life the best. And just know, at least know to yourself, to whatever level you minimize, dim your own light, hold back your own truth, that is the level to which you will succeed. And that's a choice we get to make, right? You want to be 80% authentic, you live an 80% life. You want to be 95% authentic, you get that A. It's your choice, but at least now you know that you can do it. I can tell you without question that every single time I have something I have to share with Sophie or another friend, and it feels really, really scary, the moment I share it and it's off and it goes out into the world, the moment I get to see it lift off my shoulder and become an actual authentic part of the relationship that I am with that person, And now we get to share it, and now we get to deal with it. And now we get to make that part of our authentic relationship instead of what was happening before, which was I was holding on to it. They had no idea. I hope this is helpful for you. I have a sense that Sophie and I will keep sharing about this concept because it's made such a big difference in our lives. Love you all so much. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and give us one of those beautiful reviews that we love sharing so much on the Wednesday episode. Maybe you'll win something. If you or a loved one is struggling with addiction, don't forget about our Hero program and the Family SOS program that is coming out any day now. We have a workshop on that live right now, and those links are all back there. If you have any questions, you want me to talk about any specific topics, reach out to me on ignited.me or at Dr. Adi Jaffe, or just send us an email at info@ignited.com, and we'll make sure we cover it right here. Bye. Thank you for tuning in to the Ignited Heroes Recovery Podcast. I really hope you found the information here useful and that we'll see you back here next week. And look, I want to make sure that this podcast is the most useful it can be for you, so please let me know by emailing info@ignited.com if there are any specific topics or questions you'd like to have addressed. As usual, if you like this episode, I would love for you to leave us a 5-star review and rating. Thanks, and see you next week.